Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I apologize for being late today. For those of you who join me regularly on Saturdays for story time, you know that last Saturday I was a little late because I had problems with my camera merging. Different camera, different browser, different computer. I still had the same problem today. So we'll have to have that fixed for this week, and right now I'm going on my phone again. So thank you for joining for Lunch with the Lawyer. This is Attorney Devin Shanley again from Peterson, Berk, and Cross. If you're new to this, then just as a reminder of the format, we are going to be going through and talking about a concept for about, I'm going to say about 10 minutes or so. And then I will open it up to legal questions. If you see me looking over, I'm actually going to be looking live at the cast or the questions as they come in. I also got a couple questions ahead of time. So if I don't get your question, that is fine. Then what I would say is please email questions either to myself or to the page. We will get back as much as we can and be able to address that. And if you see the camera in and out, it's because, again, I'm using my camera from my phone. So I apologize. We'll get these technical issues worked out and go from there. This week, what we're going to be talking about is placement versus custody. Now, you might want to say, why are we doing placement versus custody? One of the areas of my practice is, hi, Amarina, waving back, is family law. And that's a big area. It's a big area for a couple of the attorneys here. And one of the most common areas that happens in family law, one of the most contentious areas, is child custody issues. And I have the fortunate ability to be a guardian ad litem on cases. I work with what lawyers call pro se litigants. Pro se litigants is the fancy lawyer term for people who are representing themselves in a law fight. And so I get a chance to sit down with them in a way where I can look at what they've filed with the court, and I go, why are you asking for what you're asking, and try and get an understanding of that. And a lot of times when I get answers back, I have people who are confusing this issue. They'll say, I want legal custody, but they'll talk about nothing about what legal custody means, or they'll talk about custody, and really I hear they're talking about placement. So I wanted to put out a little brief explanation about what these two concepts are, and even try and take a little bit of the confusion about this out. I understand why people get very confused. This is complicated, and the courts don't necessarily help. A lot of times, if you're watching on TV or you're dealing with law from different states, custody will be used in a very different way than it is here in Wisconsin. And sometimes even in court cases, there will be situations where the courts will talk about physical custody, and that is dealing with something in a very different manner as well. And if we have some time, we'll talk about that too. Before I get started, I was reminded by our social media person that I should not just jump straight to the law. I should take in a little bit of time and interact. So anybody who's joining, if you get a note, please share with me what you're doing for lunch today. My lunch is coffee. Last week I had a partner that was helping out, and I got to show off some great food this week. I have a Subway run coming, and next week I'll have more great food to show off. I do want to promote, when we're talking about promoting businesses, there was a big Supreme Court ruling here in Wisconsin. Things are open, and then depending on the county, it might be closed. Do keep a lot of these local places in mind as you're looking to help out businesses. And if you're looking about, especially inside of the entertainment industry, there's a great charity going on through the local chapter of the Tavern League here in Brown County. If you go to givebacktwice.com, I'll put it into the comments section after the video is done, but if you go to givebacktwice.com, it's a raffle being put on by the Tavern League here in Brown County just to help some of those struggling businesses. So feel free, check that out. And enjoy your lunch, and let me know what you're having today. So let's get right to the fun legal stuff. Custody and placement. As I said before, courts tend to talk about custody and placement, and people especially talk about custody and placement interchangeably. People think that these are interchangeable concepts. They are wrong. It's not. When we talk about this inside of family law, there's going to be a subtle but significant difference between physical custody and legal custody and physical placement. So again, legal custody, physical placement. Let's be clear about the area, because lawyers watching will know I just couched my language in a very particular way. For purposes of what we're talking about today, I am going to be talking about family law. That doesn't necessarily cover everything that might touch a child or might touch where a child is at. There's going to be what would be generally considered juvenile law when CPS comes in and removes a child. There might be guardianships in a probate court, and a few other types of actions as well. Juvenile justice, where a child is delinquent, that might have a play as well. So you're going to want to be mindful about what sort of court action that we're in. But if we're talking between a fight between two parents, that's probably going to be family court. And that two parents is going to be key because in this case, what we have is two sets of conflicting constitutional rights. And so the courts split the concept of raising this child into two concepts: legal custody and physical placement. So what exactly is physical placement? Physical placement is probably the most intuitive of all of these. It is going to be, where's the kid? Where is the child at? Is the child with mom? Is the child with dad? Who has the child at any given point? And it's also going to be a question of day-to-day decisions. And we got two more people joining us. So hello. So day-to-day decisions. Is the child going to wear a coat or shorts when going outside? Is the child going to eat cookies or a banana or kale for breakfast? Things like this that come up in a day-to-day decision. That maybe even, if the child has a scrape, are we going to put a Band-Aid on it? Are we going to tell them to rub dirt on it and go on? Things like that just come up. Now, legal custody is going to be a little bit more difficult to explain. Legal custody is going to be the issue of major life decisions for the child. So what does this mean? What's a major life decision? Well, there's going to be obviously major medical decisions. Is that child going to have surgery? You could have something profound, as a lot of people that are going through COVID-19 will realize, and especially my wife, who's lovingly watching, will tell you, anybody who's doing some form of homeschooling, where your child goes to school and how your child is going to learn. That's a major thing. So what school do they attend? That's going to be a legal custody issue. What religion is the child going to be? Is the child going to be Catholic or Methodist or Jewish or Buddhist? Are they going to sign the Book of the Beast and join the Church of the Night? Those sorts of issues are going to be a legal custody issue as well. Also, the person who's going to say no to any one of the following things when the child is 14 and comes to you and says, I met this 40-year-old online and we really love each other and we're going to go off and get married. When the child says, I want to get a tattoo right here. When the child says, I'm going to join the military and kill all of those and then put in some sort of nationalistic slur against some nation that we're hostile against. The person who says no to any one of these things, or possibly yes, I guess, is the person who has legal custody. So how do these things interrelate? A question I got ahead of time that I really enjoyed is there a situation where you could have someone where you don't have an issue with physical placement, that's okay, and you would have an issue with legal custody? Actually, yes. The interplay to these becomes very important, sometimes in subtle ways, in litigation. For example, moving. When you move, there is a physical placement issue. Where is the child going to live? And if mom, say, is going to move a certain mile away, mom has got the right to do that, but she may not have the right to take the child with her. Generally in Wisconsin, we have a law that says if you're going to move with the child more than 100 miles away from the location of the other parent, you're going to need court approval. Okay. What if mom moves 60 miles away? That's less than 100. Can she do that? Well, sure. However, if you're moving 60 miles away, you're probably going to be changing the school district of the child as well. Unless you're going to be driving the child back and forth an hour one way, possibly more. So if you're going to change the school, then suddenly, and you're going to try and do this unilaterally by yourself, then all of a sudden the other parent can come in and say, hey, wait. Now, they can't challenge necessarily the move, but they can challenge changing the school. Now, that can become a very big thing, and then the court might go, well, wait a second here. A school is very important. You can't just change that on your own, and the court would now have the authority to effectively order the parent who intends to move to stay or lose their placement rights or have that modified based upon the situation tied to a legal custody issue, even though it would bleed over into the physical placement issue. These are going to play out in slightly different respects as well when we talk about how they're decided. Legal custody has got a lot of issues dealing with presumptions to them. So there is a presumption that joint legal custody is in the best interest of the child. That's just kind of the starting point. Parents should work together to figure out these major things for themselves. There's also an interesting release component to this as well, since a parent with custody, with legal custody, is the one that's going to be able to talk to the schools, sign the HIPAA releases, sign the release forms for school to let them go on this trip or that trip. And having both parents on board, having them work together, seems to be a good idea in most cases. If we're going to deviate from that, there's going to be specific things that are going to restrict that or force people to not have that happen. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So this is that time where we're at about the 15-minute mark. What I would say is if you have any questions, this would be a good time. Otherwise, I have a couple others that were prepared as well. So when we talk about a question that I had gotten ahead of time as well is, well, and this is one I get a lot, someone coming in and saying, well, I hear, and this is true, isn't it, that 50-50 is just what is presumed. That's the starting point. That's what everybody says. Isn't that right? Yes and no. So I think a lot of the lawyers out there that are watching will probably appreciate this. In law school, I was always told that there's one correct answer to everything in law school, and that's it depends. And that's true in practice as well. It depends tends to be the right answer because the facts are going to bear that out. Is there a statutory preference for 50-50 custody? Yes. If you're going to deviate from that, I started to hint at that. If the parents simply cannot talk to each other, and I mean beyond the garden variety, they're exes and they hate each other. I mean a very serious breakdown that's going to harm the child if they are going to try and get them together and try to co-parent. Then the court can deviate that and award sole custody. You're going to have a lot of evidence for that. Also, if you have instances of domestic violence, there's going to be a presumption for the victim of the domestic violence to have sole legal custody as well. With physical placement, the answer is murkier. I'll be honest, I think there are many courts in the state that would take the idea that 50-50 placement is the starting point, and that is what we do, and that's what the law says. That's not technically what the law says. What the law says is that placement between the parents needs to be maximized based upon the facts that are there. So what the law needs to do is they need to look at the circumstances of mom, and they need to look at the circumstances of dad, and then they need to maximize the amount of time for both mom and dad based upon what's happening in the case. there is a reading of that law that would say, well, I'm going to start at 50-50, and if you're going to go otherwise, you need to convince me. And I'm not going to say that I've encountered that completely with judges, but I would say that that sentiment exists. If you're if this is part of the reason why you need to talk to a lawyer, the lawyers will know what the local judges are thinking and where they're at and what you can reasonably expect. If you don't have that, what are you going to be dealing with? Well, you're going to be dealing with a lot of situational facts. Where does the kid go to school? Where do you live? Where does your former spouse live? What time does everybody wake up in the morning? What's your job? What hours do you keep? What hours do they keep? What sort of extracurricular activities is the child in? Next week for Lunch with the Lawyer, we're going to be talking about something called best interest of the child, which is a legal concept that I both love and hate. And we'll be talking about what that means and how to best structure things inside of that as we're making arguments, and even just understanding it. But when we talk about placement, a lot of those factors, a lot of that concept of best interest of the child is going to play in, and maximizing the time between the parents is going to be it. And so there's going to be a lot of little things that are going to go into what's going to work and what is not going to work. One thing I was reminded of as I was going through is going to be trying to also highlight, if you wanted to schedule a consultation, what would be the right thing to do. Well, you can call us, 920-831-0300. You can talk to either myself or one of the other attorneys. At our firm, we practice primarily, actually a lot of personal injuries. So if you've been hurt on the job, talk to one of the attorneys in our personal injury section. We also have a lot of family law as well, which is what we're talking about today. And then there is estate planning, which you'll probably end up talking to me. So thank you so much for joining. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to probably just sign off. And thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. And again, go to givebacktwice.com. That's givebacktwice.com. You'll have an opportunity to support a lot of local restaurants. Everybody has been hurting, but especially inside of that industry. That's something to keep in mind. And as we're doing lunch dates together, to make sure that we have some great places to have lunch, that's a good place to start to do that. So thank you for your patience with our technical difficulties, and I look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to be talking about best interest of the child. Oh, and at Peterson, Berk & Cross, we're specializing in you.